Welcome to LeaderIQ, where we share the stories of leaders in brand and retail, so you can learn what led them to find success in their careers, while giving you an intimate look at how they made foundational decisions along the way. This show is hosted by Guru Hariharan, who's the founder and CEO of CommerceIQ. Guru spent most of his career working as a leader at companies like Amazon and eBay, before becoming an entrepreneur himself. This podcast is brought to you by CommerceIQ, a company which Guru started in 2019. It has become the e-commerce operating system for brands like Logitech, Johnson & Johnson, Kellogg's, Mars, Duracell, and many more. If you're interested, check out commerceiq.ai to learn more. With that, let's get to the show. Today's guest is Kristina Lambert, Executive Vice President at Pilgrims. Kristina is a Bentonville native who started her incredible career as an intern at Tyson Foods, where she held several positions over 20 years, including Vice President and General Manager. In 2013, she was named to the 40 Under 40 list by NWA Business Journal for her work at Tyson, building brands from the ground up. Kristina then went on to serve as Head of Consumer Value Added at JBS, where she led the startup business unit of Value Added Fresh Meats, leading into her current role at Pilgrims. In addition to leading prepared foods in the US, she has responsibilities for branding, innovation, R&D, and food service sales. Without further ado, here is Kristina Lambert and your host, Guru Hariharan.
Kristina, it's great to have you on the show. Just fantastic to talk to you. We've been following your career for quite a few years now, and it's been a pleasure to know you both professionally, and hopefully we can unravel some personal stories on this podcast episode. I'd love to maybe start with just talking about your early life in your growing up. How was it growing up, and did you grow up in Bentonville? Is that right?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Guru. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and look forward to the discussion. But yeah, I grew up in Bentonville, Arkansas. Spent most of my life there. So the home of Walmart. My mom worked for Sam Walton back in the early days, and I worked there for my first job out of school as well, or while I was actually in school in high school.
Got it. So you, how was it like growing up? Are there like, could you talk a little bit about the family values that you grew up with, and potentially the ones that ended up sort of sticking with you as you've grown your career?
Yeah, I'd love to. I really grew up in a very strong female household. So my mom was a single parent most of my growing up, and my grandmother was also kind of in a similar situation. And I spent my summers with my grandmother on the farm, and she was a school teacher. We'd do summer school together, or I got to go with her. She taught the summer school. And then with my great aunt, I would spend the summer with her on her lake house and fishing. So grew up with a lot of very strong women who worked very hard in their careers. And so got to see what persistence and hard work really was.
That's great. So can you, like, how was that, like, how do you sort of juxtapose that with sort of, other sort of stories that you might have heard? Like, was there something specific? I'm trying to get to, like, what was it like to sort of grow in a very strong woman household?
Yeah, I think what I learned is, having one income, of course, makes things harder. Having to have a child that you got to juggle them into school activities and do your job at the same time because the income is important. Relying on this community. Sometimes people talk about it takes a village. I didn't hear that saying growing up, but my family, my friends as parents were the village that helped raise me. My mom got a nice job when she got a little later into her career that I had her traveling quite a bit, and she would not have been able to take that if it wasn't for the village of people, my friends' parents, who were willing to let me literally come live with them during the week.
Oh, wow. That's great. Oh, got it. And how did that, and you ended up going to University of Arkansas for college. How did you make a decision to do that? You decided, like, you liked Arkansas so much, you stayed back. I've heard, at least my kid says that he wants to go out of college, out of state to study. So how was that decision made for you?
I think I was probably more like your kids where I would have loved to have gotten further away, but being very practical and really, my mom really instilled with me not to carry debt. And so really considering what options would maybe allow me to get out without debt. I had enough scholarship opportunities through the University of Arkansas with being in state tuition and then academic scholarships as well, that it really was just the most solid financial decision, as well as I had that job at Walmart that was paying me nicely to pay my car payment and get gas in the car so I could get to school. So that was really the reason why.
So you actually started working at Walmart even before you went to college?
Correct. Yeah, they had an evening program that, because my mom worked there, she in accounting, she heard about this opening, and it was Monday through Thursday, 4 to 9 o'clock. And so it was great for a high school student, rolled into college, continued that for a couple of years until I was able to get an internship.
Nice, got it. So it's you pretty much kind of almost paid through debt free. You came out of college debt free.
Correct.
That's incredible. That's great. And how did you? What is the story of you ending up at Tyson?
Yeah. So as I was in college, I was in class, my marketing class, and someone from Tyson had come into the marketing class and talked about this internship opportunity. And that's where I was planning to major, was in marketing. And so I'm like, I don't really know what this job is. It says food service marketing intern. I didn't know if I was going to work in a cafeteria or what that was, but I felt like it was more in path with what I thought my career choice was going to be in marketing. And so I put my resume in. I actually couldn't attend the event they had that night because I was working. So I sent a separate note to them and asked them, hey, I'm working tonight, but I would love to be, to learn more about this and be considered, and send my resume. And it worked out. I was one of a few interns to get hired.
And how was, so you clearly had a career path laid out at Walmart, and that was going there. It was also special to you because your mom worked over there and stuff. Now here's a new opportunity that came up. What was it special about the marketing role at Tyson that really pulled you towards it?
Yeah, because my mom worked there, she did cry when I told her I wanted to try this internship. And I actually went into this internship. It was a lower paying job than what I already had at Tyson, but the path, the opportunity to go into my career field of marketing and learn more about it to make sure that's exactly what I wanted to do was really why I wanted to do it. I wanted to learn, make sure that was the right path.
Got it. And how did that turn out? How was your experience at Tyson?
It was great. I had almost 20 years there, enjoyed it for a very long time. Really, the opportunities were what you made of it. And as somebody who likes to learn a lot of things and came from a household where that was really important, I think I was very successful and had a lot of great opportunities brought to me.
And Kristina, as you sort of progressed in your career, must have been a proud moment when you were named 40 under 40. That's a big deal. And sort of growing up in a small household, sort of progressing in your career and having gone that, how did that feel like when you got to that milestone?
Well, I can tell you, one, I didn't even know about what this 40 under 40 was. It wasn't until we were at the celebration event and they bring in the group of us that were nominated and brought to this before we went into this luncheon. And I didn't know how big of a deal was, right? But we're in Walmart, we're in the home country, and actually Doug McMillan, who wasn't the CEO at the time yet, but he was our speaker, and Don Soderquist actually introduced him to our team. And I was familiar with him from being at Walmart. So I thought, right, really local, felt nice. But when I get into this lunch, and he's been our guest speaker, and he speaks again at the lunch, and you see, I don't know, hundreds of people there celebrating the people that I was a part of that team that year. It was just really, I think overwhelming. I had no idea it was such a big deal, but very proud at that moment.
And how did that come across? That was, I believe, because of a brand that you built from ground up. How did you approach it? And can you tell us a little about what that opportunity was and how you went about that?
Yeah. So working on the bacon business at the time, it was one that hasn't always made money, and we had flipped it to turning a more profitable business, and we were growing this brand that had a very strong hold within club stores, so it's Sam's Club. But it was we were getting told by retailers that it's a regional business. You can't take it out of Texas because that's where the production facility was at the time that was producing this brand. And they just said, you can't do it. And I always like a good challenge of, well, if you tell me we can't, right, well, we're going to find a way to do it. And so we just really got together as a team, a few of us, we got together and mapped out, well, let's start with where we're strong. Okay, so if they think we're strong in Texas, we're just going to start working our way wider geographically from the heart of where we're strong, and we're just going to keep building. And so we really just tried that concentrate and dominate kind of strategy that really, with having great products, it gives you that repeat and that purchase. So you just needed to get the opportunity to be on shelf, get the initial trial, and then it really just grew from there.
And so when you were creating, so this brand they'd already sort of almost written off, and you brought it back to life in that, starting with that geography?
I would say it was just a small regional brand that just hadn't been brought to life. It's one that had been purchased through acquisition. So it was more of a food service brand that had been doing pretty well. Then the retail, they were starting to get some strength there. And we just had an opportunity to do a better business model, if you will, right? Look for the parts of your business that can earn more, make more for the organization. And part of doing that, the consumer space is a nice place to do that when you have a product that's worth more because it's a better quality than something else.
Got it. And so oftentimes, Kristina, when I talk to executives like yourself, one common theme that I find is you sort of you believe in something, and you essentially they raise the hand and saying that I'm going to fix it, and they go in and fix it. So it looks like you had a conviction looking at it, saying that it must have sort of spoken to you that there was life in this, and you could have essentially taken this and grown it big. So it looks like you took a brand which was sort of not that favorite. It was a small one, and you decided to sort of stake a lot of your time and hence at that point your career on sort of taking that big. What gave you that confidence to see that? Was it like some leading indicators that you saw of the product being good or the region being underutilized? And this ended up becoming a big deal and actually was a stepping stone for you to be that 40 under 40 and grow your career. So I'm just looking at that seminal moment when you made that decision. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how you made the decision?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can remember the exact moment. It's been a little bit since that happened, but we did have a great product and we had a lot of loyalty in the core Texas market. And we knew we had an opportunity to improve the business through our margins if we could bring this to more people. And why deprive people across the US from a great product is kind of the thinking that we had. And I think the moment was when people told us we couldn't do it, that we were like, yeah, we're going to figure out how to do this. And we got together with the team, and I love to write on whiteboards, and we just kind of drew things out. I think we actually had a map at the time, and we took the whiteboard marker and we drew on the map, here's where we're the strongest. And if we go a little wider, here's where we would focus and concentrate and dominate. And then from there, just getting success stories and then taking those success stories to retailers. And then it just kept making it grow into a much bigger space.
And what exactly was the product?
It was a stack pack bacon.
Okay, yeah. Got it. I think it's a very interesting point to bring up, Kristina. And all these, like right now, there's so many products available for sale, and especially e-commerce has almost democratized anybody who wants to come in and sell products, that we oftentimes forget how the genesis of sales or a good sales machine is actually a great product. And it looks like you went back to the roots, and that's a great example of how sort of figuring out what is a product which has been under leveraged, undersold, and you believed in the product and you doubled down on it. Now you also operate e-commerce. Like, do you see any sort of on the one hand, we are saying, hey, there's algorithmic and there's like automation that's happening and all that stuff. There's democratization happening. On the other hand, you have foundations in building and amplifying great products. I'm wondering if you can talk to us about how you think about e-commerce when with that, especially that type of a core background and product.
Yeah, I think maybe the connection point, Rod, like you said, it's a great product. No matter if it's a bad product, they get the initial trial, they're not going to repurchase the product. So you have to have that foundation. And then the other part, especially for e-commerce, but it's true in the store as well. The packaging has to communicate to get people to buy it. And sometimes packaging, as marketers, we want to talk about logos and the claims, but the product, in some cases, like in the meat industry, people want to see what's inside, particularly in the fresh meat case or refrigerated. And so I think about the e-commerce space, now that I'm working in the frozen chicken business, it's appetite appeal, right? I want people to want to click on this product, get their attention. And so I think there's a lot of connection between not just the product, but the product and the packaging and how people can view and see it to make that decision.
Got it. And so have you, I would love to just maybe go into that element of it. Like you were at Tyson doing a really good job. You were named a GM in the business. How did the opportunity with JBS come about?
Yeah, I had a recruiter reach out, and I'm sure as a lot of people nowadays are getting lots of recruiters calling them. Normally that would not be something that I was call back, but there was, sometimes you have moments and you're just a little more open than others to having those discussions. And it was literally the only discussion I'd had with anybody, and talked with the recruiter. They set me up with a call with JBS. I met with the leadership. And what they had to offer with the autonomy to run a business was right what I was looking for at the time.
And what is it that specifically that drew you? And I realized you were at Tyson for quite a long time, and you must have really loved that company. And I'm also trying to gauge what are the tips and tricks of attracting talent, where somebody like yourself, you've been at this place. What did JBS say to pull you from such a strong loyalty to Tyson?
Yeah, I think the tipping point for me, I think there's a couple of things here to unlock. One is what JBS offered was the autonomy to run my business, which is what I had been able to do for a long time at the prior company. And it was kind of not being the same way after the last acquisition that they had made. And so if I think about reasons why people might be willing to listen to those calls, why I was willing to listen to that call where I hadn't been for so long, there's a lot of things. It's not just one thing. I think culture there had been changes. I think how you feel perceived by your leadership, if you feel appreciated or you don't feel appreciated, that's a reality for you as an individual. And when you don't feel appreciated as much as you're used to, or you don't feel like the growth opportunities or the autonomy to run your business, whatever it is that's important to you, those are things that if you're not watching, somebody's going to let that door crack open and somebody's going to come in and talk to your folks.
Yeah, that makes sense, Kristina. And also having worked with your team, you built a very strong team, and they seem very happy when they're at least as we work with them and stuff. What is that like? What's that? Can you talk to us a little bit about how you manage the team? You talk a lot about your team, the culture, and the sense of feeling appreciated. Can you maybe describe the management style that has worked for you in building a great team?
Sure. So first off, thank you. I think we have a great team as well. And we've really built this brand e-commerce team. Really, we had to start fresh and build the e-commerce from the ground up. And I believe very much in hiring people that complement your skill sets or offset your weaknesses. So making the collective better. I think being able to learn from each other is critical, and supporting each other when needed. I think that's our job as leaders, is really, as you move up in your career, you're an individual performer, and then it's no longer about the individual performance, it's about how you influence. And part of my ability to influence is driven by the need to support my team. What do they need in order to be successful? Because great companies don't come from individuals. They come from a team of individuals working together to achieve great things. And so I think it's just something, as I get any downtime, or sometimes I have scheduled times to make sure I'm thinking about these pieces, the people have to be the first thing we think about.
Are there some role models that you've followed, or are there some books that you've followed in terms of how to sort of build great teams?
I think it's been more probably of watching. I'm a very visual person, and I've had a great career with lots of great leaders. And I got asked actually a great interview question when I came to JVS. They're like, tell me about your three best bosses and your three worst bosses and why. And I didn't know, and I just answered honestly. What it tells is what's important to you, right? So when I think about my team, I feel like I need to ask similar questions almost to understand what their needs are, because it's really not about my needs. I need to know what their needs really are. And so I don't really go off of any one book. I think it's learning what works and what doesn't work, and then customizing it to the individual.
That's really cool. So one thing which one book which actually really made an impact on me, Kristina, was and I actually remember that when you hearing you talk, is this book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor. She talks about how the foundation of any relationship in a professional relationship is actually build a lot of trust by investing in the person's relationship. As a manager, you're investing in that relationship before you sort of go and get take the opportunity or the prerogative or the right to go and give them candid feedback. But once you've built that foundation in creating a very strong, trusted relationship, then you build on top of that and sort of giving really good candid feedback, as candid as it could be. And she calls it radical candor. But it's got to be on top of that foundation. Otherwise, it ends up becoming a burnout situation, frankly. But I hear a lot of that in your, like, you know, the sense of appreciation for the team, the sense of the strong foundation, and then on top of that, you go out and want to be the best boss and giving them the foundation by giving them the feedback to grow.
I appreciate that. Sounds like a great book for sure. I think I always say the gift of feedback we owe to our teammates. We owe very tough discussions when they're appropriate, right? If we need to break that into a conference room and have a one-on-one, but we need to have the hard discussions and the good discussions. We need to celebrate the small wins, because we've all lived through this pandemic. It's been a big thing. Nothing's normal anymore. Everything's new and different. And so I think celebrating the small wins when things get difficult is just critical, or you can just really get overwhelmed. But that, at the same time, when I think about that, part of it is when you think about your structure, you have to have the right people in the right roles, and you just can't tolerate when you have the wrong people in the wrong roles. So sometimes you got to find them a new seat on the bus that's a better fit for the individual and the business. And part of that, you should never be a surprise. There should always be that feedback. People should know this is where we are. That should not be a surprise to them.
I think you talked about the pandemic. Are there some management lessons that you learned and some mechanisms or tactics that you put in? You talked about celebrating small wins. That happens to be one of my weaknesses. I don't celebrate small or big wins. I'm on to the next one. And during the pandemic, like when you're in the office, you can, there's always some, like you can have watercolor conversations, and there's conversations that you end up sort of having the celebratory moments. But sitting at home, you're one meeting to the other meeting to the other meeting, and then next thing you know, it's a year gone and you haven't celebrated any wins. So I'm curious if maybe just take that strand of thought that you had on celebrating small wins and even the pandemic. Are there can you talk to us about other learnings that you've had and other tips and tricks in terms of building a strong team that you've put in place?
Yeah, and I think I appreciate you sharing too, that it's hard to celebrate the small wins. I've not always been great at it. And so I'm very vocal with my teams about it, and I want them to encourage me to do the same thing. So I for sure have people in my team are like, hey, we need to go to happy hour and we need to go celebrate. And I'll pause up for a minute, right? Because I'm like, oh, we have things to go do. And I'm like, no, you're right. We need to go do this. And so my team helps hold me honest, because I publicize that desire to celebrate these wins. And then they hold me to my word of we need to do this. So I make it's not mine, it's all of our jobs to make sure we're celebrating these wins.
That's a really cool tactic, right? Like when you go out and talk about your intent verbally and make it public that it's my intent to go and celebrate small wins, and now your team is coming back and holding you accountable for it. That's a great mechanism right there, right? Like it's one of those things where I can make a resolution and put it in my notepad saying I'm going to lose weight or whatever, exercise every day. But it's another thing when I go tell everybody, all my friends and family, think I'm going to exercise and you'll see me run in the neighborhood every day. And they'll ask you, like, oh, I didn't see you. Like, they'll hold you accountable for it.
Yeah.
So just being public about your intentions, because you have to be very careful about what you talk about and what you prioritize, but being public about it actually gives the license for the team to come back and hold you accountable for it.
Yeah, and it's rewarding for me when I see them doing it and I don't have to spur the, hey, you celebrated that success, that's awesome. When I don't have to do that and they're just doing it on their own, that's when it really feels good for me. That's
the best. And you know that you've created a machine and a strong mechanism as opposed to just intent sitting in your brain. Yeah, that's very powerful. And eventually, like maybe forwarding a little bit, you eventually land in your current role, you're executive vice president at Pilgrims. What are some things that you think you did in your career that really gave them the confidence and the organization the confidence to give you such a large portfolio and make you the leader?
Yeah, I think my results for sure are something that if you go back and look, you can see the legacy and the results, and those are hard to deny. So I sometimes will say, be so good that people can't deny how good you are. But if I think really deeply into that more so, I was in a leadership program earlier in my career, and you had to kind of write your personal mission statement. And I still remember it today, and it was engaging people to action for the betterment of all. And I think that today still holds very true to me, because it's about activating these teams to deliver these results. It's not about me going and doing them. And so when I think about why I think I've been here is I feel like that's what's generally in me as a person. And I think that's how I think about things. So even earlier in my career, when I had a project and it was more than I could handle to get accomplished and rolling out a new item successfully, I had to go ask my boss, hey, I need help. I'm a one-person team, but I need all of this help. He gave me a team in a room, and I just went through the list. I need help in these things. I got volunteers to take on these pieces. So I think when you're willing to ask for help and engage with these teams, and everybody has this shared vision to go execute, it's just really powerful.
I think to sort of paraphrase what you started off talking about, the output of having great results. Of course, everybody wants great results, but what really struck me was this mission statement that you created for yourself. I'm very curious. How did you create that? When did you create it? What led you to create it? And it sounded looks like it just rolled off your tongue, engaging people to action for betterment of all. Looks like you've really ingrained that in yourself. Talk to us about why that was important and what is the story behind that?
Yeah, this leadership course, they made us spend a couple of days really just going deep into ourselves. And I think the first part is I really panicked, because they said we were going to have to paint this mission statement. I'm like, ooh, paint sounds really permanent, and I'm not a very good artist. So that intimidated me a little bit, but writing it first was the first step, because then you had to know what to paint. But I really just thought about who I am. And I've had a history of volunteering, more so when I was younger and had more time. And from the time I would volunteer for camps for kids, I volunteered at the hospital as a candy striper. I think even when I got into sports and played sports, I was often the championship of the sportsmanship award. I would win that often from my peers. I wasn't the best player, but I would guaranteed I'm going to lose my voice cheering for my teammates to do well, whether it was swim team, which you think of as an individual sport, but you can get in the back of the lane and you can cheer your teammates on. Softball, cheering for your teammates. I feel like it's just genuinely something I'm passionate about, is caring for other people. And I think that's what ultimately those things in my childhood and coming up, I think, is what got me to what was important to me.
I think that's something very powerful, Kristina. It's great. Like, sometimes when I hear that, I kind of feel that maybe it's not too late. I should write down my own purpose and mission statement for life. It's like, what is the driving engine, the drive that gets you forward? It's, of course, everybody wants results. Everybody wants money. Everybody wants relationships and all that. But what is that life's calling? So it's very interesting to hear that from you. What led you to, like, in that workshop? Was that like you actually walked out of the workshop having nailed down and sort of kind of laminated that piece of paper saying this is going to be my purpose? Is that how, like, on a two-day period, you sort of created that?
Yeah, it was just a leadership, program where they had to select a group of people that were going to be up and comers in the company.
Okay.
That they had dedicated this training to, and that was just part of the process. They had about 30 minutes or an hour where we had to write this and then paint it.
And do you go back to that at moments? Like, is it a yearly thing, or is it like when you have a fork in the road, you go back to it? How do you sort of invoke that mission statement into your life?
I think because it actually came so easily to write, that's why it's so easy for me to remember. And I think when times get tough, or when I get an opportunity to speak with people like this, it's something that's just a natural answer for me.
It's okay like, what is the right time in life to sort of go back and write that mission statement? Like, if I had done it when I was just coming out of college, I was this young graduate, wanted to like everything was about like having a big impact on what I do and frankly make money, right? And now when I hit 40, it's a little bit more tilting to the other side, saying, well, is that really about it? Like, what is really where's happiness quotient in all of this? Where's my where's giving back in all of this? And what truly makes me feel accomplished? So it's almost like, if I look at my own career, it's changed quite a bit in terms of what I want from life when I was in 20s to 30s to 40s. I'm wondering if you have some recommendations or advice in terms of when do you sort of write your first mission statement, and when do you even update it?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I'll tell you when I did it. That training for me, I was actually probably about 7 months pregnant with my first child. So I was in my late 20s and had been through some pretty life-changing experiences. My mom had passed away. And I think those life-changing moments are the opportunities for you to really reflect on what's important, and it reminds you.
No, that's very profound. I can relate to that. I think I can see the depth of that statement that you made in terms of, like, when something life-changing hits and makes you really think through. I really appreciate you sharing that. I know it was a hard moment for you. Thanks for that. And so that's really awesome. Thanks for that. Maybe sort of going into looking forward in your role now. Can you talk to us about how you're thinking about the future as you're building your team out? And there's a lot happening in your industry. E-commerce is coming in, Instacart, and things that did not exist before. How are you thinking about the future of your organization?
Sure. I think there's that saying, right? If you're not changing, you're dying, right? Or you're not innovating, you're dying. And I think our job as a team is to have really tough discussions. And sometimes it's not tough because we're not agreeing. It's just tough to challenge each other to do something better. So there could be the easy yes, or there could be, but is there a better answer? What other things did we think about? And so I think just kind of being a little bit not complacent, and being willing to keep wanting just a little bit more, learning a little bit more, doing a little more, expecting a little more. It's amazing what your team will step up and do with a little bit of, and me as an individual too, right? I'll challenge myself to do just a little bit more, right? If I walk 30 minutes on the treadmill, maybe I can do 35, or maybe 32, maybe that's enough. But I think there's something around that, just expecting that people are great, and when we challenge ourselves, we're capable of so much.
Yeah, so I think the ever-changing aspect of it, it's never been more true that in retail and the world that we live in today than ever before. That's so true. So is that something that you look for? Like, if there's people in your organization listening to this, or people who want to work with you, like what makes them stand out in your organization? What are the key traits that Kristina is looking for to sort of pull people in and grow them in the organization and get them that next sort of step in their career and all that?
Yeah, I think for Pilgrims, we have our values that are out there. I know we all have different strengths and values, but ownership, simplicity, discipline, humility. I think of all the 7 of them, I think ownership for me is the biggest one when I'm looking for somebody that just encompasses so many things that if you think about your job as if this was your business and you do everything in that aspect of this is your business, you'll just stand out. I mean, whether your job is to clean the bathrooms or sweep the floor, I watch for small details, right? If somebody walks by trash, why are they so good they can't bend over and pick the trash up? I think there's just simple things like that, but really, I feel like the people who demonstrate that ownership value encompass so many other tremendous, great values that they're great. They're people you want to work with, right? And they make things happen. They don't give excuses.
I think to go back to your thought about ownership, it's interesting to hear you talk about it in a way that it is not just ownership of what your world is, it's about ownership of the company, of your organization, of your entire ecosystem and the team, in a way that it's not just how well you own your own world and do a great job. That's kind of almost an expectation, but can you, if something's sort of breaking all the way from maybe your trash is overflowing to something else, with some metric is broken, which you personally may not own, but is important for the company to fix, having that true ownership, I really resonate with that, and we also look for that. And I think it's great when you actually see an individual who can go beyond their scope and take that prerogative to come and bring it up to you.
Yeah, I think one thing I like to call it, because I feel like sometimes people want to ask for more and they want more responsibility, and they do it at the jeopardizing their current role and responsibilities. And it's really critical. You can't not do your current job. You need to do your current job really, really well. And if you can add value in other ways, do that as well, with permission, of course, right? Picking up trash is an easy one we can all help with. There's no reason to watch it overflow, as your example there. But I think that's one that I just would love for people to hear that message, because sometimes people are so eager, they're so worried about that next move that they're not doing the current job as if they owned that job as their business.
Yeah, like having the true sort of owner mindset on that. That's a really good one. You also talked about simplicity, and this is also a very, I resonate with this a lot as well. We oftentimes talk about how leaders simplify to invent. It's not about adding more and more complexities, because guess what? The world is becoming a lot more complex. What we need in our lives is more simplicity and more things that can we do more with just focusing on lesser things. Also curious, in your business, how do you think about, can you think about some examples perhaps, or some ways that you encourage your teams to move towards simplicity?
Yeah, I think every day it's about your priorities, right? You cannot boil the ocean. You have to narrow it down to what's going to have the biggest impact on your job or the company today, right? Every day changes. You may have 10 things you want to get done, but what are the top 1 or 2 things, never more than 3? And sometimes those 3 things, right, for some of us, they're not what I'm going to do today. It's what are we going to do for the next year? But if you think about things in digestible bites, I want people to be able to do the elevator pitch on what's most important for them to focus on and to get done. And so if we're always limiting it down to 1 or 2 things per person, and then you have other things, right? We got to all have lots of things we juggle, but what are the most important things that are going to have the biggest impact?
No, that's a good one. So and then also sort of then there's also an element of what not to do in a way, because that's, there's always everything, there's a lot of things come to your plate. And if you really focus on what are the 2 things that are going to have the biggest impact, that is a good question to ask, to say, well, do I really need to get to that number 3 or number 4 item today? Maybe that can wait.
That's right.
Yeah. Kristina, looking back at your career, you've had look at your resume, you've had a meteoric rise, and you're now a key executive in one of the largest food manufacturers in the world. Can you talk to us about some failures you've had, maybe one failure that you had and what you learned? As you think about it, as you think through it, maybe I'll just share mine. Like, when I going through now, we are running a large billion-dollar company and all that stuff. But when we went through the building of the last company, we brought in the world's best team, built the world's best technology, but we still failed dramatically in sort of creating enterprise value for our shareholders. And the reason was we actually bet on the wrong market, right? It actually, what I learned was you can win in a market with a B team and a B product, but you cannot win even with an A+ team and an A+ product in a F market. And that was a thing that we learned. It was very hard and very humbling, went through that. I'm curious about your failures. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I'm for sure I've got a few of them come to mind as you were talking. One of those is the failure when I had great new products, like you're talking about, new items to launch in the marketplace. And I was new, I was young into innovation, and I failed to support the business to get the awareness and the trial. And so even though they were great products, they don't just jump off the shelf, right? When you're in a meat business and you're in a meat case, fresh meat case, and you have a few items, unless you can get some kind of awareness to go there and explain what your product is that's different, it's highly likely you're just going to be ignored and fail to succeed. So I think that was an innovation failure. A pricing failure for me. Markets have been crazy with the pandemic.
On that innovation failure, I'm sorry, going back to that product, clearly there was some hypothesis that you had, and then you picked it up. And what was is there something that you that was a learning that came out that you could have potentially sort of paid attention to a certain thing, or what was the key learning there?
Yeah, I think the key learning was sometimes the financials, when you're launching things, they tend to show negative numbers, and the meat business is very low margin typically versus some of the higher margin type portfolios. And the stomach for lower margins or negative margins is pretty low typically. And we failed to support it because the financials didn't give us the room to do so. And now I would not do that. I would push back and say, we've got to invest in order to be profitable into the future. And I would have done a better job painting that story. So I would have taken my no. And what I say a lot to my team now is, no isn't a no. No is often a not yet. It means you haven't come to me and built the case for doing what you're suggesting. And I think if I were to talk to myself back then, I would have given myself that advice.
So in essence, what you're saying is that you would have zoomed out in a way that you would have painted certain maybe 2 or 3 phases of product development to say the first phase is not to make profits yet. It's to create some proliferation and customer happiness, or those are probably the leading indicator metrics. And then you go into phase 2 and phase 3, and when you actually are making profits. Yeah. That's a really good one. Sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about the other one. We're curious to also hear that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've learned more than once the hard way of when your market cost exceeds your pricing methodologies that you have in place. And so sometimes the hardest lessons are the biggest ones financially for your company. But if we can learn from them, you can prevent larger mistakes. And so I think having had record high markets when you're priced way too low and having fixed pricing is just a terrible spot to be in, and having some risk mitigation, right? Not putting all your eggs in one basket or one pricing methodology, and having a more diverse portfolio within your business is just so critical. You can't rely on just one thing.
Got it. And also linking to your upbringing and personal life, are there some personal failures that you've gone through in your career or in your life which have actually shaped you and who you are today?
Yeah, I think probably my most recent kind of personal / career failure. I had an opportunity brought to me to go do something different in a different organization. And it was enticing to me because it was doing kind of the similar reason I came to JBS to begin with, which was the autonomy to run my business, but it was giving me the autonomy to run a larger business that I was more accustomed to doing versus what I was currently doing at the time. And my personal failure is I didn't raise my hand knowing there were opportunities I believed I could be successful at for this company. And so I think that would be advice I would share. And it's one I continue to repeat to myself is, if I believe I can do it, I shouldn't expect somebody else. If they don't know, maybe I need to raise my hand. I think as women, we don't always do that as well. Now that I've learned from my own failure, I've read a little bit around that. It seems like that's something that women, we could do better. I think the industry, we could do a better job also trying to lift people up who've had maybe some success, or maybe just to stretch people, right? People like to do and learn more things.
I think that's such an important learning there, Kristina. I've in all these interviews that we've done, I think the big sort of seminal moments or career-changing moments, make or break, have been those when you had the confidence, you knew what to be done, and did you raise your hand or not? That usually ends up defining a huge. That's the key butterfly effect moment for a lot of these. Thanks for sharing that. Kristina, you're also a proud parent of 2 teenagers. Talk to us about how you're sort of juggling a busy work schedule, such a big responsibility at your role, versus also bringing up your kids.
Yeah, I get asked this question a bit, right? It's not as often that you have the partnership. For my husband, he stays home with the kids. And with COVID, right, he was a teacher, he was the bus driver, he was the chef, all of these hats. And I think I'm able to do this just like my mom was, right? My husband is my village. He supports me, he supports my career, he supports our family by allowing me the flexibility to do what I need to do for this role. And he'll joke with me about that at times too. He's like, oh, well, I do this. I'm like, yeah, but we have kids because you agreed that we have this partnership. So we went into this together, and we kind of knew this would probably be the path. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy working with people. It makes me a better person. And so he likes me when I'm happy, being challenged. And I think it's a great example for my kids, like my mom was for me, to see how her working so hard. It's great for my kids to get to see that mom goes to work and dad is available to teach them things that maybe I wouldn't be able to teach them. I'm not a very good cook. He's a better cook. So and driving, I for sure have a teenager learning to drive. I'm very happy that he's teaching them to drive and not me.
What a gift to have a great partner in life. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. On the lighter side of things, as the world is starting to open up now, and looks like, in fact, Pilgrims has been always in going back to work, right? Because you are in the food industry. But as the world is opening up more, is there anything that's left on your key thing on your bucket list that you're looking to accomplish over the next 1 year or so?
This is one I've been trying to think about. I'm not sure what it will be. I did at one point get trained as a hospice volunteer before we moved here. And it's probably something I may explore again, but it takes a very big toll on the heart to deal with. And I was trained to deal with the children who were going through this, or deal with their family. I think it would take a lot of strength to be able to do that. So I'm not sure if I'm quite ready in the next year, but I do think that's something that I'd like to bring back.
That's great to hear, Kristina. And in going back to your life mission, you're truly standing true to that of engaging people to action for betterment for all. What a mission that you've set out on for yourself. Well, Kristina Lambert, thank you so much for being with us. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, and certainly I learned a lot from your life, and thanks for sharing all the stories with us.
My pleasure. Thanks, Guru.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, it would mean so much to us if you could take a moment to share this show on LinkedIn. To learn more how Guru and his team can help optimize and grow your e-commerce business on Amazon and other retailers, visit commerceiq.ai. Thanks for listening.